Hi, okay, so in this tutorial I want to look at the camera tracking that's built into After Effects. In fact, I can talk about it while it's doing it, so I'm going to just drag my footage, which is camera tracking 01, which is just a shot of, this is actually the Parkside building when it was first being built, and that's me just filming from the car park. What I'm going to do for this tutorial, you're welcome to use the whole video if you like. I'm just going to go in for a few seconds there. I'm going to shorten that down, okay, and I'm going to just say right click, trim comp to work area. So I've literally just made it actually about a second and a bit long. The reason I've just done that is just to speed it up a little bit, but you're welcome to work through the whole shot there. And what I'm going to do is obviously make sure my layer is selected and go animation, and again I've got so we looked at track motion. There is a warp stabilizer built in. Okay, Mocha is a different piece of software built specifically for tracking, so you can take the footage through to there and track it. And then we've got track camera, so that's what we're actually going to look at doing. So rather than tracking the motion of objects, in fact let's just apply the track camera so you see it starts to work. Rather than it is tracking, I guess, the motion of the objects, that's the only thing it can see, but what it's trying to use is use that information in order to figure out how the camera was moving. So that's actually what's going on. And what the software also does is when it's tracking the trying to work out the camera movement, is it's trying to find tracking points in the footage, so anywhere it can see them. So again, you see there's a lot of windows here which are quite dark compared to the walls, so hopefully they should make some good tracking points. So the software is like looking for sort of any really tracking points it can find, hence why it takes a little bit longer to get through. That's why I kind of shortened up the video as well rather than going through all of it. Okay, but once it's done that, let's say it applies it back to a camera. So I'll show you what that does. Right, there we go. So okay, so it's giving us all these tracking points that it's kind of found. Okay, and it's holding on to, and you see they kind of, it adds more as it goes through as well, because it's depends on the detail. You'll find the same thing if you're moving in and out. Sometimes tracking points will disappear as you move back, or add in as you come closer to a shot. But yeah, so like I said, so there's a whole bunch of ones it found, and I can move this sort of plane along and sort of attach it to any of these. And you see it's basically creating a triangle, so it grabs any 3 points and it uses them to figure out then the movement of that object. So it's kind of every time you move through, it's always trying to create a triangle between any 3 points, and uses that to figure out how the object sort of where the object sits. Right, okay, so let's have a quick look. It does have a create camera button. That's not really the one I'm going to use, just because for this tutorial I want more than just a camera in there, but I'll just add that in just to show you what's going on. So we do that, and there's a camera being added, and if I jump to 2 views for a second, okay, if I move back, you see there's the camera, and let's just select the layer so we can see it. You'll notice that as the camera moves in this frame, so you can see the camera going to the right, this camera does the same thing. Okay, so really what it's doing is it's like I said, looking at how all these objects are moving in the frame, and then taking that information and applying it back to the camera and making the camera move, okay, based on how all these points moved. So like I said, now you've got yourself a virtual camera that should be moving in a very similar way to the camera that I was holding. Okay, and what that means is now we can put objects in this scene, and if the camera sees them, they should move exactly the same as this footage in here. So they should look like they're attached to objects or sit inside that scene. With this footage as well, I got to a point where I stopped going right and I started panning left again and coming back, and again it doesn't really matter where the camera is going, it would work that out, and this camera would mimic that movement. So I'll just get rid of that camera, because the camera by itself for me right now isn't really going to be that much use, although I could add anything into that scene I wanted. So what I'm going to want to do instead is now that I've got that there, okay, select the layer, I can actually select the camera tracker. So if I want to, like I said, I can just click any individual point. So I'll go with these 3 here or something maybe. Okay, and I'm going to just right click, okay, and say create text and camera instead. So it'll give me a camera, but it'll give me a piece of text with it too. If I'd gone with the create camera button, it would still give me these options, but it would just say create text, create solid, create null. So obviously you can create a piece of text, you can create a solid, so just a, you know, we've used layer solids before, it's just one solid color. And you can even create a null which is basically an object that you can see in this scene here. So like a box, but when you render out that object doesn't appear anywhere. So the point of a null is sometimes you just want something to attach information to or things like that. So you can use a null in this scene, move it around, whatever, do whatever you like with it. But when you render out, you don't see that object. So if you, a good example might be there's a tutorial where for the cube, for the 3D cube I created, where I use parenting. So in other words, one layer was moving, but it was a parent of loads of other layers, and they all follow this one layer. So a null is quite good at things like that. So you kind of animate a null, and then you make it the parent of other layers, and all these other layers follow the null around. And when you render, you don't see the null, you just see the other layers. If you do want some more information on that or want to see how it works, just let me know. But I'll go create text in camera. So there we go. So we've got a piece of text. In fact, that's not really on the axis. Oh, actually, no, it won't be. Yeah, sorry, it's all right. There's no. So I'll go create text in camera. Sorry. Yeah, there we go. So you'll see we've got a camera back again, and we've got a piece of text. Like I said, I could have done that anyway. Once I had the camera in there, just create the text. But there you go. You can see the text is there, and again, so the camera moves past it, and because the text. Remember, cameras only see 3D objects, so the text is 3D. The background isn't. So the background just plays as a video clip regardless. The camera is not having any effect on it. But the camera is moving past the text. Because it's moving past the text in the same way my camera was moving when I recorded this, it looks like the text in a sense. It gives it that feeling of being in the scene because it's moving exactly the way the camera is, whether the camera is moving up or down. This is a handheld shot, by the way. So we'll go back to one view. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually, I could bring it down in size, or I could even move it around in 3D space. I was going to say, because you'll notice the size is quite small. The reason it's quite small is because the camera is seeing it as being quite close. So sometimes, you know, it doesn't put it in exactly the right place. So it perhaps doesn't understand the distance. But as well as it might, but what we'll do is we'll pop that there perhaps. Might just give it a lighter color perhaps. Okay, maybe not too light, just given the surroundings. But yeah, so like I said, you can just set that up any way you like. Okay, so we can even start to just put the text in, and again, like I said, which kind of work a little bit better because at least it's starting to attach against an object rather than just sort of floating there in space. So again, align it up perhaps with something in the scene, and really apart from that, then it's about how you embed it into that scene. So I can just using 2D layers. You know, create some kind of feeling of shadowing. Again, I'm not going to give it really dark black shadows, but I will kind of just give it something, there we go, just to give it that sense of depth. So you can kind of then play around all the, yeah, maybe it doesn't need to come in a little bit more. Okay, yeah, so I was going to say, yeah, it's about then how do you composite realistically. So that would be the next thing to look at. This is a 2D layer, obviously. So it's sitting in there. It's very solid. It's got a very solid color. So maybe a ramp or something else could work, or you know, try something else maybe rather than just keeping it as one big solid piece of white. Everything here has differences in shade. That white there is not the same as the white, although it's not technically white either. It is not the same as the white sort of over there. You know, there's light hitting this. You could use a light source perhaps, so you could actually light this text up. So that's something to look at then. How do we sort of composite this better? But for now, I just wanted to introduce how the 3D camera works. But you can put any 3D object in that scene. Like I said, the camera should then just move around it, hopefully make that object feel as though it's in the scene. Okay, so again, give that a shot and see how it goes.